I'm Renee Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today.
Hello, I'm Billy Thomas, and welcome to From the Woods Today. Unfortunately, Renee Williams could not be with us today, so I'm going to be running the show solo, but we got a great one for you. We're going to be talking all about pollinators this week, and we've got a brand new guest. We're really excited to have Miss Karen Michael. She's the Central Kentucky Butterfly Association president, and she's going to be talking about pollinators overall, but also maybe some activities that you all can get engaged with if you're in the Central Kentucky region. We also have Mr. John Schultz. John is the NRCS State Forester here in Kentucky, and John's a great partner and friend to all of our woodland owners and partners out there across the state. And John's going to be talking about some of the programs that are available to help pollinators and pollinator habitat here in the state. So we're looking forward to having John on again as well. And then we'll wrap up the show with Dr. Ellen Crocker. Dr. Crocker's got a new segment on about what's bugging your tree. This is something that people are seeing around now. So we'll be excited to have Dr. Crocker on covering that. If you all have any questions for our presenters, please use the chat function and we can interact with you that way. If you're on YouTube Live or a podcast listener, please hit us up via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu. And as always, we have a little survey that you can complete on our FromTheWoodsToday.com if there's any topics you'd like to see in the future. So without any further ado, I'd like to go ahead and bring on our first guest, Ms. Karen Michael.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here. My camera's not working. It's going to glitch, but I just wanted to show everybody my face and say I apologize for the video. But I'm excited to be here and share this presentation with you.
Well, Karen, we certainly appreciate that. We know you're a master naturalist as well. You come highly regarded. Both Laurie Thomas and Ellen Crocker were bragging on you immensely about the work that you do. And so we're really excited about having your presentation. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and get started with that, Karen.
Sure, I will go ahead and get this going. And thanks for having me today. I just wanted to let you guys know who I am and what I do and what NABA Central Kentucky is. I appreciate being asked to speak to everybody today. So NABA Central Kentucky is the North American Butterfly Association, and we are a chapter of the North American Butterfly Association here in Central Kentucky. The reason we formed in 2019 was simply because I started out as a photographer, and I worked here at the University of Kentucky full-time at the Gill Heart and Vascular Institute, and I found myself on campus pre-COVID walking around with a little lens on my camera, getting pictures of insects and butterflies and flowers and things like that on my breaks. Led me to purchasing a real camera and then moving on to the Arboretum to get more shots, and met Adam Baker, who was a PhD student in entomology, who said, there's not a North American Butterfly Association chapter in Central Kentucky if you'd like to start one. So I thought, okay, sure, I'll do that. So that's what we did. We formed in 2019. 2020 obviously was a bust for a lot of us. 2021 was sort of a bust as well, but really 2022 is when we started to get really busy. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and this map here represents chapters throughout the country, where all the NABA chapters are, and as we speak, more are being started. So this map probably could be updated. As you see, there's a high concentration of chapters in Florida. Our home chapter would be in New Jersey, which is where it was started. I cover the Central Kentucky zip codes listed here. So if you're in one of these zip codes and you join the North American Butterfly Association, which you'll see information on that later, and you're in one of these zip codes, I automatically get information from our parent organization letting me know you joined, and then you'll get on my newsletter. If you're out of area, and I do have out of area members, once you join the North American Butterfly Association, you just need to reach out to me and say, hey, Karen, I joined, and I'll get you hooked up with all of our communications. But let's move on to why we're here today, and that is to talk about pollinators and Pollinator Week, which is really important because it starts next week. So It is an annual celebration in support of pollinator health that was initiated and is managed by Pollinator Partnership, as you can see there. The Pollinator Partnership is a national nonprofit organization. They were founded in 1997, and they serve exclusively for the protection and promotion of pollinators and their ecosystems. So NABA is a partner with them, as we partner with many organizations around the country, but we like to do our part to promote Pollinator Week. And what I'm going to talk about next may be a little elementary to a lot of you, but I think if you don't remember what you learned in science class, this is a good refresher. What is pollination? Well, it's the act of transferring pollen grains from the male anther of a flower to the female stigma. And I found these beautiful illustrations here that really give you an idea of how this all works. I'm sure many of you know this, but for those of you who are joining us who are just interested in nature and pollinators and wonder how it all works, just as a refresher for you from elementary school, this is how this works. And I love these beautiful illustrations. What I love about it is the bee with his pollen pockets there, moving from one flower to the other. And our bees are really what drives pollination for us the most. But we're going to talk about some other pollinators as well. Why is pollination important? Well, pollinators contribute to the ecosystem's health and a sustainable food supply. You could read that information there that I got from the USDA, farmers.gov, and pollinator.org. But I think what is most important that I tell you about is that 1 out of every 3 bites of food you eat is there because of pollinators. And just let that sink in for a minute. If we want to talk dollars and cents, pollinators add about $217 billion to the global economy. And honeybees alone are responsible for between $1.2 and $5.4 billion in agricultural productivity in the United States. In addition to the food that we eat, pollinators support healthy ecosystems that clean the air, they stabilize the soils, they protect from severe weather, and support other wildlife. So pollination is obviously very, very important for our Earth. Typical pollinators that we see here: bees, ants, beetles, butterflies, birds, flies, moths, wasps. If you can look at these pictures really closely, obviously you can see the bee has got some pollen all over it. People don't always think of birds being our a pollinator, and they certainly are. They move from place to place. They've got their beaks down in the flowers. Sometimes they're getting the bugs out. But that zebra swallowtail up there in the upper right corner, I should have zoomed in for you. I hope you can really see on its body. There's yellow speckles all over it. That's your pollen. I took a picture of this zebra swallowtail laying an egg, or ovipositing as it's called, on the pawpaw tree at Flora Cliff Nature Sanctuary here in Lexington about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And when I blew up the photo after putting it on my computer, I realized that zebra swallowtail is covered in pollen. So I couldn't think of a better picture to put here today. These are our typical pollinators, but what's next important to know is our unlikely pollinators: bats, reptiles, snails, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. They may unintentionally carry pollen from one place to the other, but they also play an extremely important role in pollination here on Earth. So what I like to do next, and I can't hear any of you, but I'm going to give you this little quiz anyway. What is the state butterfly of Kentucky? And I ask this with every lecture that I give, but not a lot of people answer, and you may be answering in the chat, but I can't see it right now. I'll look at it in a little bit. So if you got it right, yay you. But our state butterfly is the viceroy. It was designated the official state butterfly of Kentucky in 1990. It looks like a monarch, but it's not. It's much smaller than a monarch. And it has that black line that dissects the hind wings there that you can see. So it has about 2 to 3 broods from May to September. Its host plant for its caterpillar is the willow family, including poplars and cottonwoods, which we have native here in Kentucky. But what's also important is that you can get this beautiful license plate. The Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund, $25 total cost of that registering your motor vehicle with this license plate. $12 goes to the transportation cabinet for the production of the plate, and $3 goes to your county clerk, but $10 comes back to the Heritage Land Fund. So I have one of these on my car. I actually had it personalized with the words or letters POLN8 for pollinate. So if you ever see me around, you'll know that's me, and you'll know that pollinators are my passion. This is an extremely important conversation. Current pollinator threats. And it's important to, when I'm tabling events, let me start over. When I'm tabling events, which we've got several events coming up in the following week that I'll share with you, people always say to me, what is the biggest threat? Shrinking habitat, parasites, disease, pesticides, climate change, invasive non-native species. As of June 15th, 2020, there are more than 70 species of pollinators currently listed as endangered or threatened. And the number of managed honeybee colonies in the United States has dropped from 5 million in the 1940s to approximately 2.68 million in 2023. This was according to the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. So native vegetation is replaced by roadways, manicured lawns, crops, non-native gardens, and pollinators are losing the food and nesting sites that they need that are necessary for their survival. So you can reduce the risk of pollinators by using integrated pest management on your land versus pesticides. That's just one way. The rising temperatures on the earth and climate change is always a hot topic for people, and some people will come to me at events and say, is that really true? Well, it is really true. Rising temperatures may be contributing to a decline in bumblebees. The numbers of North American bumblebees have fallen nearly 50%, as I said before. So the biggest losses have occurred in places where temperatures have risen the highest. What can we do? Just do your part. Plant for pollinators. Plant native plants. Reduce or eliminate the impact of pesticides. Reduce your environmental footprint. Support the work of your local groups like NABA Central Kentucky, the Kentucky Native Plant Society, and other organizations like us. Be a community science. Spread the word with your friends. Include kids in your activities, and that is crucial. Yes, Whitney Houston said it best. I do believe our children are the future. It's very true. I have so many kids showing up at events wanting to just suck in all this information. It's really amazing, and I want to share it with them as I can. What is NABA Central Kentucky's role? Well, we do an annual butterfly count. The national organization started this butterfly count, and then Floracliff, Beverly James, who is the preserve director at Floracliff Nature Sanctuary, a private nature sanctuary here in Lexington, Kentucky, started the count before I ever started my chapter. So we now partner and do a count circle within Fayette County, and we count at the certain locations every first Saturday in July. And we also started one in the Palisades region with Shaker Village, Laura Baird, who is there. And we're going to do that at the end of July. This will be our third one coming up at the end of July. We do monarch tag with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, but this goes to a bigger organization of Monarch Watch. You may have heard about monarch tagging and the amazing butterflies that make their way down to Mexico. And we do butterfly walks and educational lectures such as this. Here are some resources for you, and I'm going to be putting all kinds of links in the chat when I'm done. So if you want, take a picture of this with your phone. If not, you'll get some information in the chat. And then I'm going to also put this on our Facebook page later, which you'll also have a link to, so you can check us out and you can join our newsletter. But these are some great resources for you. If you did not know, the Kentucky Department of Agriculture has a pollinator protection plan, and there's a link there to the PDF. Like I said, the Native Plant Society, Pollinator Partnership, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. One more quiz for you. Pollinator trivia, butterfly or a moth? This one always trips everybody up, but it is a white-tipped black moth. It's also called the snowbush spanworm. It's found in Florida and Texas, and it's been recorded in Arizona, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Illinois, and it primarily eats Phyllanthus. We have some important upcoming projects coming with Lakeside Golf Course. It's right near the parking lot there at Lakeside. That very far picture on the left is how it used to look. The one in the middle is how it looks now. And the one on the right is Brent Harrell with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who was seeding it just last week for us. This is going to be in a beautiful pollinator area that will serve Fayette County. We hope to use it for future field trips. It's been ferned, it's been herbicide. There was so much poison ivy there. It's been now seeded. I checked it out just 2 days ago and walked through there and pulled some golf balls out. So it's going to be a beautiful area. Keep an eye out on our Facebook page and our newsletters for how beautiful this is going to be for future field trips and what we can do for Fayette County and pollinators, because our mayor did sign a Mayor's Monarch Pledge. And this is a big highway for monarchs right through Lakeside Golf Course. So I see we'll get a lot of beautiful field trips there in the future. Upcoming events for Pollinator Week. Beginner Butterfly ID, June 13th at Raven Run. Registration is recommended on the Parks and Rec site, and I will put a link to that in our chat. That's kind of a pre-event. Beverly will be leading that from Floor Cliff. Our big Pollinator Week kickoff party is at Raven Run, Monday night at 6 p.m. No registration required. We're going to have about 6 or 7 exhibitors coming. We're going to hand out seeds from Roundstone Native Seed. We hope to have some beekeepers there as well. And I'm going to give another presentation. It will be specifically about some butterflies of Kentucky. And then I'm going to lead a pollinator walk throughout the Monarch Way Station that they have there in the front. Butterfly ID for beginners. There was one spot left at on June 18th at Flora Cliff Nature Sanctuary, which I'll put a link to them in our chat. You can also wait list. That is a free event. Bumblebees of Kentucky, there were 7 spots left. They've got a special speaker coming in at Flora Cliff. That also is free, but registration is required. And then another butterfly ID for beginners at Shaker Village. That one does have a cost, $15 for member, $20 for non-members on June 22nd. If you haven't been to Shaker Village, it's just a beautiful facility. I'm leading a butterfly ID walk on June 23rd for Pollinator Week. It is the last day at Heisel Farm Park at 1 p.m. No registration required. We do ask that you come prepared for ticks with long pants and some nice hiking boots and bug spray and sunscreen and lots of water at 1 o'clock. There's no registration, but donations of $5 is appreciated back to our chapter. This is information on how you become a member. You can take a picture there of our QR code and the 2 magazines that you get when you become a member of the North American Butterfly Association. Again, links will be on our website and in the chat. This is just a brief overview of the membership. Butterfly or moth. People think these little grass skippers are moths all the time, but they're not. As you see, their antennae are bulbed on the end. And moths have feathers if they're male and just straight if they're female. So this is our Zabulon skipper, which has been wonderful during the spring and the summer months. It eats bluegrass. So here we are in the bluegrass state. This is how you can help contribute to NABA Central Kentucky. We use Give Butter as our funding source. Scan the QR code and give us any donations there you'd like to give. And this is an important slide, obviously, as I end my presentation today, talking about our pollinators and why they're so important. This is my email address, my cell phone number. You're always welcome to text me a picture if you don't know what it is, and I'll do my best to look it up. I heavily use iNaturalist as well and the new eButterfly app. And you'll see projects on there, Butterflies of Central Kentucky and Butterflies of Kentucky. And I've got me listed as NABA Central Kentucky on iNaturalist as well. Those are the hashtags we use for our social media. And there's our Facebook page and our Instagram page. So I hope that you will follow us and come out and see us next week at Raven Run. Learn about pollinators and how they can serve our earth. And that's all I have for today. I'm having trouble hearing you, Billy.
All right, how about now?
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you very much for that presentation.
Oh, you're welcome.
It was really interesting, and it is amazing how many opportunities you all have available for people to participate in upcoming. So hopefully everybody will take advantage of those and get connected with your organization. I will ask folks, if you have any questions for Karen, you can use the chat function to interact with us. I think Karen's going to stick around and be dropping some links into the chat function as well, so you can check out those links. But Karen, really appreciate you and what you're doing for such an important component of our natural world out there with the pollinators. It's really interesting and very, very important. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so we'll keep the show going. But again, if you have questions for Karen, please drop them into the chat, and we'll try to get to those. But next up, we have Mr. John Schultz. John is with the Kentucky Natural Resources Conservation Service, and he's a true partner that we have. And John, it's great to have you back on the show again.
Yep, great. Thank you, Billy. Yeah, it's great to be back. Coming to everybody from the state office here in Lexington, Kentucky today.
Right.
So
well, good deal. So John, you're going to be talking a little bit about kind of how NRCS interacts with pollinators and maybe supports them.
yeah. Mostly just talking about kind of just a quick overview of NRCS, who we are. I know a lot of folks know who we are, but not everybody does, and the important work that we do with our farmers and forest landowners across the state and across the country. And then talk a little bit about just some of the programs that we have and how landowners that may be interested in working with us can access some of those programs, specifically to the work that we do with pollinators.
Excellent. So folks, if you do have questions for John, please use the chat function and we'll get to them after his presentation. But John, you can take it away whenever you're ready.
Right. Schultz, I'm the NRCS State Forester, covering the forestry program for NRCS across the entire state. But as we know, and I think as the Karen's presentation, you know, we see a lot of pollinators that do interact with woodlands, but we also see you know, a lot of woodland properties across the state that have fields and edges and riparian areas, and each one of those habitats is really a super important link to pollinators. As is the forest, and a lot of tree species hosting specific types of pollinator plants, and just kind of the overall habitat makeup and that habitat decline is really, as an agency, what we're trying to support to increase the habitat for pollinators and you know, just supporting those efforts. So just wanted to kind of give everybody just a brief introduction to NRCS. So the Natural Resource Conservation Service is pretty much the premier private lands conservation agency within the federal government. We operate completely voluntary. We have no authorization other than just voluntary conservation. So we provide conservation planning assistance. We have coverage throughout the entire state. Is a little just kind of how we're organized. We got main work unit offices and field offices, and our folks are spread across the entire state to assist landowners in planning and programs that we administer. So really where it starts is with that conservation planning aspect. So just want to highlight this photo. You know, it may be you know, that field edge into the woodlands, kind of a little piece of a larger farm that really a landowner may say, hey, you know, there's a great opportunity to do something here for overall for wildlife habitat, but you know, maybe incorporating some specific needs for our pollinators native plant plantings, grasses and flowers, and really a mosaic of species that maybe just aren't present on the farm currently, but could be increased to provide that habitat. And so landowner would come to one of our NRCS offices, introduce themselves, start working with the local NRCS staff or the conservation district staff. We have a great partnership with all of our conservation districts. And then that conservation planner will come out to the farm, do a farm visit, and really identify what the issues are on the farm, what the opportunities are, present different alternatives. And so at this point, really crafting kind of a farm plan or a plan specific to providing that pollinator habitat. So that would be, what species of pollinators would we see would be most benefited with the farm and the location, and then what planting mix may be appropriate, what species to plant, when to plant them, how to plant them, and once that plan is developed, then we can really get into the programs part of it. So just a quick rundown of getting assistance from NRCS. So again, starting with the planning and then filling out an application, the basic eligibility requirements, and then each project is ranked. And then once that project's selected for funding, then the landowner would go out and actually implement it per the plan. So NRCS provides a cost reimbursement for a lot of these practices through various programs. And so really our bread and butter program that we administer that has the largest budget in the state and across the country is our environmental quality incentives program. And we have some great what we call conservation practices that directly support pollinator habitat. And so those would be our conservation cover practice. And that one is really just a general pollinator planting of a variety of different native flower and plants that would give that cover to support a variety of different pollinator species. And what we try to do with that is provide some kind of a flower source throughout the year, nesting habitat, really just understanding kind of all the things that make up a great pollinator habitat and what their needs are, and making sure that we can plant those as appropriate. We also have our contour buffer strips, so that would be one where if there's a cropland or pasture land, and there's also a concern of maybe some water quality, some runoff, some soil erosion, we can incorporate a lot of pollinator plantings into that buffer strip, so that there's always opportunities to kind of have multiple benefits. And then just our general field border practice, so that one's looking at edge of fields coming against pasture, coming against the edge of a woodland. Really a lot of opportunities there. And then just our general forestry practices. I don't have those listed, but any good kind of practices that we would do to support healthy forests, healthy woodlands, could also directly benefit pollinators in doing that work. So another program that we have would be the conservation stewardship program. And so this is really a great program for landowners that maybe have already participated in EQIP. They've already taken care of kind of the main resource issues on their farms, and these are really kind of designed to be more of a management type practice. One where, in addition to the great conservation work that our landowners have already done, we can really build upon that. And so, again, there's kind of a trend where we got our conservation cover, our field border, but then we also have one that's specific to establishing pollinator habitat, and that's our E420. Enhancement that we offer through the conservation stewardship program. And the stewardship programs, it's a great program. It's a 5-year program that a landowner would enter into with us, and then it can be renewed after that 5 years. And so we can continue to do a lot of this great work. And these are really drilling into specific types of pollinator habitat. So for monarch butterfly, especially, establishing milkweed and a lot of those other types of pollinators that maybe have a very specific need, that E420 enhancement is really designed to help landowners to be able to establish that habitat on their farms. So with that, it's just kind of just a general overview. NRCS, we're always supportive of just general good conservation work that's happening out there. And a lot of this pollinator work is actually happening across the entire state of Kentucky, on all different types of land uses, from forest land to cropland to pasture land. We starting to work a lot with urban farmers and smaller type landowners, and we don't exclude anybody. So if there is a general interest, I just encourage any landowner to make that relationship with their local NRCS field office, get that farm visit, get that local knowledge out there of what could be possible on your farm or property, and just generally support good conservation, and especially the pollinator habitat that's desperately needed to be increased and enhanced across the nation. So.
Excellent, John. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that very much. There was one quick little question. Somebody had asked, what is edge of field practice? They'd never heard of that. I guess part of your presentation there. I'm talking about edges of fields.
Yeah. So, oftentimes, and this is especially when we're looking at like a cropland field where, there's just maybe an area that gets a little steep or runs off towards a stream or a waterway, or there's a line of trees. I see that pretty common, is there's a line there between trees and cropland, and so it's a way to kind of like soften that edge a little bit. So add some diversity into what's probably just a grass or some other kind of unmanaged type strip between one pasture or crop field and our woodlands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like edge feathering it up, right?
Edge feathering, yeah. So there's a lot of other things for wildlife habitat that we look at if we're doing just woodlands. So yeah.
Well, John, what amazes me is how many programs you all have out there for conservation practices. Really, if somebody's trying to improve their property, it's almost like you all have got a program that can help them do that in one way or another.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
your organization's amazing, and the work you all do is so vital to our natural resources here in Kentucky. So I can't thank you enough, for your leadership on some of the forestry programs, but just generally what NRCS does for our state. It is greatly appreciated. Yep. All right. Thank you, John. And we'll
Right.
have you back again real soon, buddy.
All right.
I would tell folks, if you are participating in our Woodland Owner Short Course, John's going to be covering part of our session coming up in a few weeks. So you can get to learn more about those NRCS programs if you're interested by participating in the Woodland Owner Short Course. And Karen, if you're still around, there was a question that you might be able to respond to. Someone was asking about all of the mosquito spraying and the push for mosquito spraying, what impact that may have on butterflies and hummingbirds and maybe some other non-target things.
Sure, absolutely. I got a video to work here for a minute.
Okay.
So, yeah. Obviously that is a serious problem. So that's why we encourage people to use other pest management to get rid of those mosquitoes and things. I think people have good intentions and they want to enjoy their time outside at home, but what they forget is about the wind carrying that spray. You may have a neighbor who sprays and you're trying to protect your pollinator garden, but the wind would carry it over, and even the minuscule amount could hurt it. So it is something we have to really try to educate the public on other ways to do that. There are some pesticides that aren't as harmful to some of our pollinators, and I'll leave that to the experts to kind of answer that question. But it is a concern, and it is something that people ask me about all the time. And all I say is it's education, it's communication with your neighbors. So it's a great point.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for responding to that.
Yeah.
I wasn't really 100% on that. So, yeah.
Sure.
And again, appreciate your appreciate your presentation. It was really nice.
Absolutely.
Good deal. All right. So we'll keep the show rolling though. And we've got Dr. Ellen Crocker coming on. Hey, Dr. Crocker.
Hey everyone, a great show today. Such wonderful speakers with Karen and John. Really appreciate them coming to share their expertise. Karen, I'm a big fan of everything that you're doing, and am always comparing the insect diversity in my yard, as well as with all my great pollinator plants going on. It's a really fun thing to do. Appreciate both of you.
Excellent. Yes, it was good. Very good. All right. So you're going to be talking about something maybe folks are seeing right now, huh?
I am. So I am also going to talk about insects, but maybe not pollinators.
All right.
Perhaps something else that you might see on the trees in your woods this time of year. And you may be concerned about it because it's causing your leaves to look bad. So today we're going to be talking about yellow poplar weevil, and hopefully you can see my slides and see this leaf right here. But this time of year, if your tulip trees have seen better days, if their leaves are turning brown, looking like this picture, it could be the work of the yellow poplar weevil. This weevil causes damage to the leaves of yellow poplar trees, or tulip trees if you prefer. There are different names for the same tree, as well as some other species. Both the adults and the larvae of this insect feed on those leaves, and while its impact can be very noticeable, you can see this and be alarmed. This is a native insect that typically does not cause severe problems. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about yellow poplar weevil, what it is and what it's doing in your trees. So first, let's look at this weevil. Kind of cute if you think weevils are cute. They are small, black or brown in color, and they have this noticeable long snout. Now, I have heard people say that they look tick-like, but I think that the snout sets them apart. It's a native insect that has a single life cycle each year. And typically it's present in small numbers, but you can get some kind of bigger outbreak years where there's more extensive numbers and extensive damage. So the adults of these weevils, here you can see it again, overwinter in the leaf litter. And after they emerge from that litter, they begin feeding on newly emerged buds and leaves of yellow poplar and other species, creating these distinctive feeding marks that look a little like curved grains of rice, maybe a tan or a brown color on those new leaves. This tends to happen in the late spring and the early summer. And that's kind of the first sign of the feeding by those weevils. And after feeding on the leaves and mating, the females are going to lay their eggs in a row right along the midrib of that leaf. And you can see a picture of that here. And after those hatch, those will also feed on the leaves, but the damage they cause looks slightly different. So after hatching, those developing larvae, these little grubs, are going to feed as leaf miners. So they're kind of feeding on the leaf tissue between the upper and lower surfaces of that leaf, creating a little tunnel where they're feeding. And this tends to happen in early summer. And you can see it's really blotchy and causes kind of bigger brown patches in the leaf. In this one, someone has kind of opened up that leaf mine so you can see what's going on the inside. And this is kind of a leaf that has examples of both of those types of feeding. The feeding by the adult weevils here, as well as a big blotchy leaf mine caused by the larvae here. So eventually the larvae are going to form cocoons and pupate within those leaf mines, and then they're going to emerge as adults in midsummer. Those adults will continue feeding for a little while on the leaves, and then in midsummer, they're going to drop and overwinter in the leaf litter. So they'll go into dormancy and just hang out there. So a little bit on the life cycle of those weevils. What do they impact? Well, their favorite host is yellow poplar or tulip poplar. Take your pick on the name there. But they also can feed on some other species. Magnolias and sassafras are also susceptible, and you might see some damage on those as well. Because of this, you might sometimes hear them called sassafras weevils or magnolia leaf miners, in addition to being called yellow poplar weevils. A lot of different names for the same thing. So where are they found? They're found broadly throughout the eastern US. If you think about the range of some of these species, like yellow poplar, it's got a pretty broad range, but they are most prevalent in the central Appalachian Mountains. So areas in eastern Kentucky and Virginia and West Virginia and Tennessee and Ohio can sometimes experience really heavy damage to foliage. So that's where you'll see the most damage. So for identifying yellow poplar weevil, if you see the weevil itself, it can be pretty helpful. You know, again, you might mix it up with a tick or something, but that large snout is pretty distinctive. But they can be hard to see because if you think of how tall some of those yellow poplar are going to grow, you may not be able to see the tiny little weevils on the leaves unless those leaves fall down. What you might be easier to see is the feeding, those rice-shaped feeding pits that the adults will make and then feed on that juicy green tissue there. They're kind of a brown, light brown, tan color. This is a leaf that fell out of a tall forest tree during a storm. So because of that, I could see all of these weevils on it, and you can kind of see them there feeding. And those brown spots can be a little easier to see and less transient than those weevils. You might also see the leaf mines. Again, they're going to have this really blotchy form to them, and typically developing on the edges of the leaves. You might see some distortion of that leaf and that whole leaf turning brown sometimes. So if the tree is under a lot of stress, you might also see the trees dropping their leaves early. Yellow poplars will commonly drop their leaves in response to any number of different stressors and put on a new flush afterward. So you'll see it in landscape trees like this one that's in response to drought, and that might happen several times over the course of the summer. So while this tree, you can see the yellow poplar weevil damage here, Probably the yellowing on this particular tree is due to drought, but that's kind of, an adaptation that yellow poplar has. It'll drop its leaves and it'll put out a new flush. And while this might stress trees, this is something that they do, and it's a lot less damaging to yellow poplar than it would be to some other species like, let's say, oaks, who really do not want to be dropping their leaves in the middle of summer. And if it is a real, severe year, if you look up into the canopy of your forest trees, you might see a lot of browning. And that can be mistaken at a distance for something else that's maybe more serious. Now, it is likely that this stresses the trees out and reduces their growth that year, but it's pretty rare to have severe outbreak years year after year. So when it comes to managing yellow poplar weevil, the browning in those leaves, it can look bad, but it rarely causes significant damage to the tree. Multiple years of defoliation could make the trees weaker and more susceptible to other issues, but it's really unlikely that those weevils are going to cause tree mortality, especially in trees that are growing well, that are already established. Typically, active management of these insects is not necessary, and especially in forest settings, and it's not going to be practical. Some insecticides, however, have been approved for managing yellow poplar weevils, and they're typically most effective at killing those adults that are feeding. In severe cases, let's say you have recently planted trees in urban or landscape settings. They're smaller trees, there's not as much foliage. Foliar application of those insecticides can be done, and it should be done when you're seeing about 10% damage in about 10% of the canopy, and then repeating that as necessary, because those weevils develop over several weeks, so you're likely to kind of see more of them. In addition, that timing is key because those weevils are pretty wrapped up by midsummer. So if this is something you see in the middle of the summer or late summer, that's going to be too late for any treatment that year. It's also worth noting that there are many native parasitoids that impact yellow poplar weevil. And so your application of insecticides should be balanced with wanting to kind of avoid any unnecessary damage to that natural control that's occurring. So thanks for joining me today and learning a little bit more about yellow poplar weevil. Now, when you see this damage, you'll know more about it and hopefully relax, since it's not likely to be a major health concern for your trees.
Dr. Crocker, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, that's something that people are worrying about, right? And it seems like increasingly there you've covered a few things that people maybe don't have to stress so much about. So I guess that's a great thing, right? Where you're not dropping on these big bombs that are going to destroy all of our yellow poplars out there in Kentucky. But it is.
There's enough of forest health that is like, oh no, there's a terrible thing that's happening. And this is one that you might see, because we do see it. You'll see it every year. Yeah. Maybe just a little bit of it, maybe a lot of it in some years. And I was noticing it pop up further south of us in Tennessee. I was traveling through there and seeing a lot of it. So I'm not sure what that's going to mean for us this year. And that's where I got some of those videos of those weevils feeding from. But we're sure to see it. How much damage it's going to cause varies year to year with the population of those weevils, but something that typically is not going to be a major concern for the health of your trees.
You're like, yes, yeah, there's something we can live with, right? No, I really appreciate that, because, again, we want people to be aware of what's going on and, know when to be concerned and maybe when you can let things, maybe go and not worry too much. So that's always good to hear. Dr. Crocker, you're actually going to be with us tomorrow night on the Woodland Owner Short Course. So folks, we have our Woodland Owner Short Course going on right now, and Dr. Crocker is going to lead a session on woodland health tomorrow evening. So if you've registered for that, you can get in and enjoy her presentation. And if you haven't, we still have some slots available for the online sessions that you can register for. But as always, Dr. Crocker, we appreciate all you do for forest health here in Kentucky. The lab you run and the team you've built to try to address a lot of emerging and down the road issues is really impressive. So we're just grateful to have you here. Yes.
Right back at you, Billy. Great to be on. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And then we'll have you on again real soon, I'm sure.
Can't wait.
Yes, thanks. Thank you again. All right, folks. So we've had a great show today. We really appreciate Miss Karen Michael talking about pollinators and all the great stuff that's going on here in Central Kentucky, really throughout the U.S. To support pollinators. So hopefully you can take advantage of some of those opportunities she has upcoming. She did a great job, and we'll have her back again. As always, we also appreciate Mr. John Schultz. Again, John with the NRCS here in Kentucky, and he oversees the forestry programs that many of us are familiar with. And if you're a woodland owner or a county agent you're not familiar with, you need to learn a little bit more about those, because there's some great opportunities to get some good stewardship work done on the ground. And then finally, we had Dr. Crocker covering the yellow poplar weevil, which is something you may be seeing in your own trees very soon, but fortunately it may not be much to worry about. So folks, as always, we appreciate you all being with us each and every Wednesday. I will let you know that we will be off on June 19th for Juneteenth, but we'll be back on June 26th, and I'll be picking up the Value of Woodlands Part 2 in our 3-part series on that. So again, a big thanks to everyone, and a big thanks to our presenters, and we'll look forward to seeing you all on a future episode of From the Woods Today.
From the woods today.